Never fund a party for someone who's ever told you you don't belong here. Here's exactly why that rule exists. My name is Madison Taylor and I'm 24 years old. For the past 6 years, I've been what my family calls their financial insurance policy. What I call it is something very different, but we'll get to that. 3 days ago, I stood outside the Riverside Event Centre at 7 p.m. sharp, staring at a security guard who had just asked me the most humiliating question of my life. "Excuse me, miss. Are you on the guest list?" Behind him, through the glass doors, I could see the graduation party I had funded with $850 of my own money. The party celebrating my 18-year-old sister Sophia's acceptance into Northwestern University. The party where apparently I didn't belong. But let me back up, because this story doesn't start with that moment. It starts with a pattern that's been building for years, like cracks in a foundation that nobody wants to acknowledge until the whole house comes crashing down. When I was 18 and Sophia was 12, our mother passed away from cancer. Dad fell apart for about 6 months, and somehow I became the one holding everything together. I got a job at a local bank, started community college part-time, and began what I thought was temporary financial support for our family. 6 years later, that temporary support had become as permanent as the wallpaper in our childhood home. The first time I should have seen the pattern was Sophia's 16th birthday party. I had saved up $300 to help Dad throw her the sweet 16 she'd been dreaming about. We rented the community centre, hired a DJ, ordered a custom cake, the works. But when it came time for the family photos, I was asked to step aside. "Madison, honey, could you grab more ice from the kitchen?" Dad had said, right as the photographer was setting up the shot with him, Sophia, and her closest friends. This is just for the birthday girl and her inner circle. I spent that entire party refilling punch bowls and cleaning up while Sophia held court like a princess. When people asked who had organised everything, Dad would beam and say, "Well, Sophia planned most of it herself. She's so mature for her age." The second red flag was Sophia's high school graduation. I paid for her cap and gown rental, the flowers for the ceremony, and the fancy dinner afterward at Romano's Italian Bistro. But when we got to the restaurant, I was seated at a separate table with some distant cousins I hadn't seen in years, while Sophia sat at the head table with Dad and her friends. "You don't mind, do you, Maddie?" Sophia had asked, using the childhood nickname that somehow made everything worse. "It's just that this table is for graduates and their immediate family. And you're more like, well, you know, our supporter." Our supporter, not our family member, our supporter. I should have said something then. I should have pointed out that immediate family doesn't usually exclude sisters. But I didn't, because I had convinced myself that I was being petty. That family was family, and family helps each other out without keeping score. What a joke that turned out to be. The pattern continued through Sophia's senior year. When she needed money for prom, $200 for alterations to her dress, I provided it. When she wanted to go on the senior trip to Florida, $450, I covered it. When her car broke down and needed repairs, $600, guess who got the call? But I was never included in the planning, never consulted about decisions. and certainly never thanked in any meaningful way. I was the ATM that happened to live in the same house and share the same last name. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago when Sophia got her acceptance letter to Northwestern. Dad called me at work, practically shouting with excitement, "Madison, Sophia got in. She got into Northwestern. We need to celebrate." I felt genuine happiness for her. Northwestern was her dream school, and despite everything, I loved my sister. "That's amazing, Dad. What were you thinking for celebrating?" "Well, we want to throw a real party, something special. Sophia deserves it after all her hard work." "Absolutely. What's the budget looking like?" There was a pause. "Well, that's the thing, honey. Money's been tight with all the college prep expenses. I was hoping you might be able to help out, as her big sister." Of course I was going to be asked to fund it. "How much are we talking about?" "Well, Sophia found this perfect venue, the Riverside Event Center. It's $850 for the space, but it includes tables, chairs, basic sound system. She's got her heart set on it." $850. That was more than my monthly rent. "Dad, that's a lot of money." "I know, sweetheart, but think about it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. Northwestern. Our little Sophia is going to one of the best schools in the country." Our little Sophia. Always our little Sophia, never my little sister. "Can we talk about this when I get home? I'd like to see the venue details and maybe discuss some alternatives." Of course. Sophia actually already put down a deposit, just $50 to hold the date, but we need to confirm by tomorrow, or we lose the slot. She'd already put down a deposit before asking me, before even telling me about the party. That night I came home to find Sophia at the kitchen table with her laptop open, surrounded by printouts of catering menus and decoration ideas. "Madison," she squealed when she saw me. "Look at this place. Isn't it perfect?" She turned the laptop toward me, and I had to admit the Riverside Event Center was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the river, hardwood floors, elegant lighting. It was the kind of place you'd rent for a wedding, not a high school graduation party. "It's gorgeous, Soph, but $850 is really steep." "Have you looked at any other options?" Her face immediately fell. "Other options?" "Madison, this is Northwestern we're talking about. I'm not celebrating the biggest achievement of my life at the community centre like some basic party." "I'm not saying the community centre, but maybe something in the middle. There are lots of nice places that aren't quite so expensive." Dad walked into the kitchen then, and I could see him reading the tension in the room. "Everything okay, girls?" "Madison doesn't want to pay for the venue," Sophia said, her voice taking on that wounded tone she'd perfected over the years. "That's not what I said. I just think we should explore our options before committing to something this expensive." Dad sat down at the table with us. "Madison, I know it's a lot of money, but think about everything Sophia's accomplished. 4 years of straight A's, varsity soccer, volunteer work at the animal shelter. She's earned this." I wanted to point out that I'd also earned things, like the promotion I'd just gotten at the bank, or the associate's degree I'd completed while working full-time. But celebrating my achievements had never required an $850 venue. "It's not about what she's earned, Dad. It's about what we can afford." "We can afford it if we all pitch in," Sophia said. I've saved up $200 from my part-time job. Dad said he can contribute $150 and you could cover the rest. It's not like you don't have the money. There it was. The assumption that my money was family money, that my bank account existed for their benefit. Sophia, I do have savings, but they're for emergencies and my own future. This is a party, not an emergency. My graduation is an emergency to me, she snapped. Sorry, I'm not important enough for you to want to celebrate. And there was the guilt trip, right on schedule. I looked at Dad, hoping he would step in and point out that emotional manipulation wasn't okay. Instead, he reached over and patted Sophia's hand. Madison knows you're important, sweetheart. She's just being practical. That's what makes her such a good big sister, always looking out for our finances. Looking out for our finances, like I was the family accountant instead of their daughter and sister. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about the $350 Sophia wanted me to contribute. It wasn't that I couldn't afford it. I had been saving aggressively for the past 2 years, hoping to eventually move into my own apartment. But something about this whole situation felt wrong. It wasn't just the money, it was the assumption, the expectation that I would pay without question, that my role in the family was to provide financial support while staying quietly in the background. It was the fact that they had already put down a deposit and chosen a venue before even asking me. But most of all, it was the way Sophia had said, "It's not like you don't have the money," as if my money belonged to her by default. The next morning I woke up to find Dad making coffee in the kitchen. Sophia had already left for school. "Morning, honey, sleep well?" "Not really. I've been thinking about the party situation." He turned around, his expression hopeful. "And I'll pay for the venue." His face lit up. "Madison, that's wonderful. Sophia is going to be so excited. But I want to be involved in the planning. If I'm paying for it, I should have some say in how it goes." Of course. You can help with whatever you want." That should have been my first clue that "of course" didn't mean what I thought it meant. Over the next 2 weeks, I found myself handling more and more of the party logistics. Sophia was too busy with senior week activities to deal with catering quotes, so I called restaurants and compared prices. Dad was slammed at work, so I coordinated with the venue about setup times and decoration policies. When the caterer needed a 50% deposit 2 weeks in advance, guess who got the call? "Madison, I hate to ask, but could you cover the catering deposit? It's $300, and I'll pay you back once I get my next paycheck." Dad's next paycheck. Right, the same paycheck that somehow never seemed to stretch far enough to pay me back for previous loans. By the time the week of the party arrived, I had paid for the venue, the catering deposit, decorations, and even Sophia's new dress, because her part-time job money had mysteriously evaporated when she saw a pair of shoes she absolutely had to have for the party. The total was just over $850. Somehow it had crept up to $930. But I told myself it was worth it. Sophia was going to Northwestern. This was a big deal, and maybe, just maybe, this party would be the thing that finally made me feel like a real member of the family instead of just their financial backup plan. I should have known better. The day of the party, I spent the afternoon helping set up decorations at the venue. Sophia flitted around taking selfies with her friends, while I hung streamers and arranged centerpieces. When people asked who had organised everything, Sophia would smile and say, "Oh, my dad and I planned it together. He's so good at this stuff." Not a single mention of me. Around 6 p.m, as guests started arriving, Sophia pulled me aside. "Madison, would it be okay if you came a little later? Like maybe 7? I want to have some time with just my friends first, for photos and stuff." I looked around at the party I had funded and largely organised. "Sophia, I helped set all this up. I've been here for 3 hours already." "I know, and I totally appreciate that, but this is kind of my moment, I just want it to feel special and intimate for the first hour." Intimate? A party of 50 people was intimate, but not if I was there. "Where do you want me to go for an hour?" "You could grab dinner somewhere. There's that cute cafe down the street. My treat." She pulled a $20 bill out of her purse and held it out to me. $20. She was offering me $20 to leave the party I had paid $930 to throw. But I took the money because what else was I going to do? Make a scene at her graduation party? Ruin her special day over my hurt feelings? So I drove to the cafe, ordered a sandwich I didn't want, and sat by the window watching people walk into the Riverside Event Centre. Watching them walk into the party I wasn't allowed to attend for the first hour because my presence would make it less special. At exactly 7 p.m, I walked back to the venue. I had been checking my appearance in my car mirror for 10 minutes, making sure I looked happy and celebratory, making sure no one would be able to tell that I felt like hired help instead of family. That's when I met the security guard who changed everything. "Excuse me, miss, are you on the guest list?" I smiled politely. "I'm Madison Taylor, Sophia's sister." He checked his clipboard. "I don't see a Madison Taylor on here. Let me check with the event coordinator." My stomach started to twist. There must be some mistake. I'm her sister. I helped organise this party. "I'm sure we can sort this out. Just give me 1 second. He walked over to where Sophia was standing with a group of her friends, all of them posing for pictures by the floor-to-ceiling windows. I watched him lean in and say something to her. I watched her glance over at me, and then I watched my 18-year-old sister, the girl whose party I had just spent $930 on, walk over to the security guard and say the words that would change everything between us forever. "She doesn't belong here. This is my private celebration." The words hit me like a physical blow. "She doesn't belong here." I stood there, frozen, as the security guard nodded and turned back to me with an apologetic expression. Behind him, Sophia had already returned to her friends, laughing at something someone had said, as if she hadn't just erased me from existence with 6 simple words. "I'm sorry, miss, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a private event." "Wait," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "There's been a misunderstanding. I'm her sister. I paid for this venue." The security guard looked uncomfortable. "I understand this is awkward, but the event coordinator has made it clear that you're not on the guest list. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them." My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Dad. He picked up on the second ring and I could hear party music and laughter in the background. "Madison, what's up, honey?" "Dad, I'm outside the venue and security won't let me in. Sophia told them I don't belong here. There was a pause and I heard him say something to someone, probably covering the phone with his hand. Madison, don't make this into a big thing. Sophia just wants her party to feel special and intimate with her friends. Why don't you head home? We'll celebrate as a family tomorrow. I paid $930 for this party, Dad. And we're grateful for that, sweetheart. But sometimes being a good sister means stepping back and letting Sophia have her moment. I felt something break inside my chest. Her moment? Dad, I organised this entire party. I paid for everything. I spent my afternoon decorating while she took selfies. Madison, you're being dramatic. This is about Sophia's achievement, not about you. Then why did you ask me to pay for it if it's not about me at all? I heard him sigh, and then I swear I heard this. He actually laughed, not a happy laugh, a dismissive, frustrated laugh. Madison, this is what family does. We support each other. That's your obligation as her big sister. And frankly, I'm disappointed that you're trying to make Sophia's graduation about your feelings. My obligation as her big sister was to fund parties I wasn't allowed to attend. So I'm supposed to pay for everything and then leave when I'm told I don't belong? You're supposed to be mature enough to understand that sometimes family means making sacrifices. Sophia worked hard for 4 years to get into Northwestern. This is her night. Don't ruin it because you're feeling left out. The line went dead. He had hung up on me. I stood there in the parking lot of the Riverside Event Center, staring at my phone, listening to the sound of my sister's graduation party through the windows. The party I had paid for. The party where I didn't belong. That night, I drove home and sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by all the evidence of a life I had put on hold to support my family. My associate's degree diploma on the wall, the one I had earned while working full-time to help pay household expenses. My work clothes hanging neatly in the closet, the professional wardrobe I had built because someone had to be the responsible one. My savings account statements on my desk, showing the steady deposits I had been making toward my own future, the future I kept postponing every time my family needed help. I opened my laptop and started going through my bank statements from the past 2 years. I wanted to see exactly how much I had contributed to family expenses, how much of my own life I had funded away. The number was staggering. $14,643 in 2 years. Sophia's Sweet 16, $300 her prom expenses, $200 senior trip, $450 car repairs, $600 graduation party, $9 to $30 plus dozens of smaller things. Emergency grocery money when Dad's paycheck ran short. Gas money for Sophia's car. School supplies, clothing. The family cell phone plan that I had somehow become responsible for paying. $14,643 of my money, spent on a family that didn't consider me worthy of attending the events I funded. At midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Thanks for helping with the party. It was perfect." Helping, like I was a vendor she had hired, not her sister. I didn't reply. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I called in sick to work, the first sick day I had taken in 8 months, and spent the day making phone calls. The first call was to my best friend Jessica, who had moved to Chicago the year before for a marketing job. "Madison, this is a surprise. Don't you usually work Saturdays?" "Jess, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen, okay?" I told her everything. The party, the security guard, Sophia's words, Dad's reaction. When I finished, there was a long silence. Madison, honey, what you're describing is financial abuse. It's not abuse, Jess, it's just family dynamics. No, Madison, when people repeatedly take your money and then treat you like you don't matter, that's abuse. When they make you pay for events and then exclude you from them, that's abuse. When they laugh at you for setting boundaries, that's abuse. The word abuse hit me like cold water. I had never thought of it that way. But they're my family. Family doesn't treat you like an ATM with legs. Family doesn't make you pay for parties you're not allowed to attend. Madison, you've been conditioned to think this is normal, but it's not. After I hung up with Jessica, I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for 20 minutes, gathering courage for what I was about to do. Then I walked inside and asked to speak with Marcus, my supervisor. Marcus had been promoted to branch manager 6 months earlier, and we had developed a good working relationship. He was only a few years older than me, but he had a way of seeing situations clearly that I had always admired. Madison, what brings you in on your day off? Please tell me you're not here to volunteer for extra hours. Actually, I wanted to ask you about something personal. Financial advice. His expression became more serious. Of course. What's going on? I told him about the joint accounts I shared with my father, accounts that had been set up when I was 18 and still living at home full time. Accounts that my family had access to, supposedly for emergencies. Marcus, I've been going through my statements and I'm seeing withdrawals I don't remember authorizing. Not huge amounts, but regular ones. $50 here, $100 there. He frowned. Do you have the statements with you? I handed him the printouts I had brought. He studied them for several minutes, his frown deepening. Madison, in the past 6 months alone, there have been over $2,000 in withdrawals from these accounts that you didn't make. Look at this. Every few weeks, there's a cash withdrawal of between $50 and $200, always made at the ATM near your father's work. My stomach dropped. $2,000? And this one here from last month, a $500 transfer to an account I don't recognize. Do you know what this was for? I stared at the statement. May 15th. $500 transferred to an account ending in 4739. I have no idea what that account is. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Madison, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you trust the people who have access to these accounts to only use them for legitimate emergencies? I thought about Dad's laugh the night before. I thought about Sophia telling security I didn't belong at the party I had funded. I thought about $14,643. No, I said quietly, I don't. Then I strongly recommend you close these joint accounts and open new ones that only you have access to today. It took 2 hours to sort out all the paperwork. By the time I left the bank, I had closed 3 joint accounts and 2 credit cards that had my father and sister listed as authorized users. I had opened new accounts that only I could access. And I had transferred every penny of my money into accounts that my family couldn't touch. My phone started ringing before I even got home. Madison, there's something wrong with my card. It got declined at Target. Sophia. Of course she was calling about shopping. There's nothing wrong with your card, Soph. I closed the account. You what? Why would you do that? Because it's my account and I can close it whenever I want to. But I need that card. I was buying supplies for my dorm room. Then you'll need to use your own money. Madison, that's not fair. You can't just cut me off without warning. I can actually, and I just did. She hung up on me. 5 minutes later, Dad called. Madison, what the hell is going on? Sophia said you closed her credit card account? I closed my credit card account, the one that she was an authorized user on. Why would you do that? Because over the past 6 months, you and Sophia have taken over $2,000 from my accounts without asking me. Because last night she told security that I don't belong at the party I paid for. Because I'm tired of being treated like a bank instead of a family member. Madison, you're overreacting. That money was for family expenses. What family expenses, Dad? The $500 that was transferred to an account I don't recognize? The cash withdrawals from the ATM near your work? What emergencies were those for? There was a long pause. Those were legitimate expenses. Then you'll have no problem explaining what they were for. Another pause. Madison, I don't appreciate being interrogated by my own daughter. And I don't appreciate being robbed by my own father. How dare you accuse me of robbing you? Everything I've done has been for this family. No, Dad. Everything I've done has been for this family. Everything you've done has been taking advantage of me. You know what your problem is, Madison? You've always been jealous of Sophia. You can't stand that she's successful and popular and going to Northwestern. So you're punishing her. The accusation hit me like a slap. Jealous? Dad, I'm proud of Sophia. I've been supporting her success with my own money for years. But supporting her doesn't mean I have to disappear so she can pretend I don't exist. You're being dramatic. Am I? Last night, your 18-year-old daughter told security that I don't belong at her graduation party. The party I paid $930 for. And when I called you, upset and humiliated, you laughed at me and told me it was my obligation to pay for things and then leave when I was told to. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. And you know what, Dad? Sophia was right. I don't belong there. I don't belong in a family that treats me like this. I hung up before he could respond. An hour later, both Sophia and Dad showed up at the house. I heard them in the kitchen, talking in low, urgent voices. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Madison? Dad knocked on my bedroom door. Can we talk? We can talk through the door. Don't be childish. Open the door. I'm not being childish. I'm setting boundaries. Sophia's voice joined in. Madison, we want to work this out. We're family. Families don't treat each other the way you've treated me. We love you, Madison. You know that. Do I? Because love doesn't usually involve taking someone's money without permission and then excluding them from family events. It wasn't like that, Dad said. You're misunderstanding the situation. Then explain it to me. Explain how taking $2,000 from my accounts without asking is a misunderstanding. Explain how telling security I don't belong at Sophia's party is a misunderstanding. Okay, look, Dad said, maybe we could have handled things better, but you're our family, Madison. We can work through this. We're planning another celebration next weekend, a family dinner at Romano's to celebrate Sophia's graduation. You'll be the guest of honor. Guest of honor. After everything that had happened, they thought the solution was making me guest of honor at another event I would probably end up paying for. I don't want to be guest of honor, Dad. I want to be treated like a family member. And if you can't do that, then I don't want to be part of this family anymore. You don't mean that, Sophia said, and for the first time she sounded genuinely upset. I do mean it. I'm moving out. I'm getting my own apartment, my own life. You can fund your own parties from now on. Madison, please, Dad said, don't let your ego destroy our family. My ego. After years of funding their lives while being treated like hired help, he was accusing me of having an ego problem. It's not my ego that's destroying this family, Dad. It's your inability to treat me with basic respect. They stayed for another hour, alternating between pleading and arguing, between promises to do better and accusations that I was being selfish. But I didn't open the door, and eventually they left. That night I started looking at apartment listings online. 6 months later, I was living in a beautiful one-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from work, with plants on the windowsill and pictures on the walls that I had chosen myself. My bank account was growing steadily for the first time in years. I had started dating Marcus. The conversation about my family's financial abuse had led to other conversations, and we had discovered we had a lot in common. I changed my phone number and gave the new one only to a few close friends and my workplace. I told Dad and Sophia they could reach me by email if they needed to discuss anything important. The emails started a week after I moved out. Madison, this is ridiculous. You can't cut off your family over a misunderstanding. We need to talk about this like adults. Dad. Maddie, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings at the party. I was just stressed and wanted everything to be perfect. Can't we just forget about it and move on? Sophia. Your father had to take out a loan to pay for Sophia's first semester at Northwestern. I hope you're happy with yourself. Dad, I don't understand why you're doing this to us. We're family. Family forgives each other. Sophia. I didn't respond to any of them. 2 months after I moved out, I ran into my Aunt Linda at the grocery store. She was Dad's sister, and we had always gotten along well. Madison, I haven't seen you in forever. How are you doing? I'm good, Aunt Linda. Really good. I heard you moved out. Got your own place? Yeah, it was time. She studied my face. You look happy, more relaxed than I've seen you in years. I am. Good for you, honey. You know, I always worried that your dad was putting too much pressure on you after your mum died. You were so young to be taking on so much responsibility. It was the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, the situation hadn't been fair to me. It was a learning experience, I said diplomatically. Well, you learned well. You're a strong, independent young woman, and your mother would be proud of you. As I drove home from the grocery store, I thought about what Aunt Linda had said. Your mother would be proud of you. Mum had been the one who taught me to be generous, to help others when I could. But she'd also been the one who taught me to stand up for myself, to never let anyone treat me like I didn't matter. I think she would have been proud of me for finally learning that lesson. Now, 6 months later, sitting in my apartment with Marcus, making dinner in the kitchen, and Jessica calling from Chicago to catch up, I finally understand what family actually means. Family isn't people who share your blood or your last name. Family is people who treat you like you belong, who celebrate your successes and support you through your struggles, who would never dream of taking your money and then telling you that you don't belong at the events you funded. I have family now, real family. The kind that builds you up instead of treating you like an ATM with feelings. And to anyone out there who's been told they don't belong in their own family, you deserve better. You deserve to be treated with respect and love, not used and discarded when it's convenient. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to walk away from people who don't value you, even if they happen to share your DNA. You belong somewhere. You belong with people who see your worth. Just make sure those people aren't taking $930 from you and then having security escort you out of your own investment. Trust me on that one.